or those of similar blood are forbidden.
The marriage law, one of the Nuremberg decrees of 1935, was aimed at protecting the purity of German blood. The Nazis divided people into racial types. They said Germans were descended from the Aryan race. This propaganda film shows Aryans of old, the Teutonic Knights, supposedly the root of all German culture and nobility. Pure Aryan Germans could be recognized from their blonde hair and blue eyes. It was all a fantasy, but the fantasy was dressed up as science. Germans were being taught to think of other races as somehow less than perfect. And the German people bought the lie. Signs cropped up. Jews not wanted here. With the Nuremberg decrees, this discrimination was set down in stone. German Jews lost their citizenship. They lost the right even to call themselves German.
And yet, you know, the funny thing, how losing your citizenship hurts less than those silly, petty details. Not being able to sit down in a tram. Public benches painted bright yellow, set aside for Jews only. I would not have sat there for my soul.
In any case, you're not Jewish.
No, but I'm not Aryan either. Oh. Half and half. It was so confusing. They call it a science. They like to think it's so clear-cut, but... I had a friend. He was Jewish, but tall and blonde. I went with him past a restaurant. There was a big sign, Jews keep out. And he said, watch this. And he strolled in, and he flirted with the waitress. And when she brought his food, he said, oh, sorry, I didn't see the sign. And he just left, leaving her shaking in anger. After Kristallnacht, they took him away. The Nazis never liked to be mocked.
Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, was on November 9th, 1938. It was a pogrom, an organized attack on German Jews. Across Germany, 100 synagogues were burned down. 300 Jews were killed. 30,000 were rounded up, mostly men, to spend a week in holding camps. A taste of worse to come.
Our house was burned down. I remember walking through the streets, glass under our feet, not knowing where we'd sleep. It was the morning after. They were still smashing windows. We had to dodge into the doorways. There were vans of stormtroopers. They'd draw up, arrest people, and take them to the camp at Dachau. It was one of the most terrifying days I can remember.
Where did you sleep?
There was a grocer that we knew at first. She said, there is no room, but come in, wait for my husband. And then her husband didn't return, and neither did her son, and so there was room. I think that one of the most terrifying things about Kristallnacht was knowing suddenly there was no more hope. For so long we said, it'll be all right. But now it was like a war had been declared.
In the year that followed, a third of the Jews still in Germany left the country for America, Palestine, the United Kingdom, anywhere that would take them. The Nazis made it as difficult to leave as it was to stay. They could take nothing with them, and what they left behind was taken by the government. Other countries put limits on refugees. Queues at foreign embassies stretched around the bloc. One of those lucky enough to get an exit visa was Elspeth's husband, but Elspeth's own papers failed to arrive.
We had promised that we would never be apart, and we hadn't in all our marriage, not for more than 1 or 2 days. And my husband said, "I won't go without you."
Is that too tight?
No. No. But he wasn't strong. He wasn't coping well with humiliations. And so I begged. Go. If I'd known then how long we were to part, I'm not sure that I would have had the strength.
In the 2 years that followed Siegfried's departure in 1939, Hitler took Germany to war against the Allies in Europe and Russia in the East. For all Germans, the war meant tightening their belts, but for Germany's Jews, the suffering was hardest. This footage is logged as film number 28 in the Stuttgart archives. It was shot on October the 30th, 1941, as part of a war diary the city of Stuttgart had commissioned, and it shows delivery day at the Jew shop. After the war, a Stuttgart Jew called Frederick Marx viewed this snatch of film. He pinpointed the secret policeman caught idling on camera. But more than that, he questioned their staging of events.
Any claim that Jews received the same rations as the rest was propaganda. We still had some meat till 42, then that was stopped completely. Well, there were no eggs. If the film shows crates being unloaded, they must have been ordered for the camera. And there wasn't any oil, though the film shows plenty. Lying is such hard work.
Since 1939, new laws had increasingly hemmed in the Jews. Shops like these were now the only places where the Jewish community could buy food. For some, this meant a 6-mile walk every day from the outer suburbs. They weren't allowed on the trams. They weren't allowed radios, pets, typewriters. They had special identity cards stamped J for Jew. And most humiliating, a law decreed 2 months before this film was shot, all Jews in public had to wear a yellow Star of David on their clothes.
I would walk through the streets of Munich with a star on my coat, like a leper, ringing his bell. Unclean. Once a woman spat in my face. You have to look straight through people like that without seeing them. Or how could you bear it?
During these months, Elspeth Rosenfeld was in a ghetto in Munich. Ghettos were special areas where Jews were kept apart from Aryan Germans. Elspeth's was crowded, but comfortable enough. A converted convent, 6 women to a room. In the east, in the countries Germany had invaded, Jews had also been gathered in ghettos. Here the conditions were terrible. 600,000 ghetto Jews died of disease and starvation. By conquering the East, the Nazis had vastly increased the number of people from so-called inferior races under their control, all to be made to suffer by the German master race. The Gypsies of Hungary and Romania, the Slavs, and the Jews of Eastern Europe. 3 million in Poland, 4.5 million in Russia. Ghettos were one solution, but by the end of 1941, another final solution had begun: the mass murder of the Jews of Europe.
Thousands of German Jews from Stettin were taken to Lublin in Poland. We used to send food parcels, and in return we got letters. And then the letters stopped and the rumors started. And then, in the spring of '42, it was our turn. We were taken to a barrack at the railway, and then 2 nights waiting, and then from the barracks to a railway embankment. There were Nazis there, I think. They had gathered as if to see some sort of show, Jews wailing and begging to stay, but we had a dignity which made my heart overflow with respect. And then a whistle. And then a voice calling my name.
Rosenfeld! U.S. Rosenfeld! To the Gestapo at once!
And they told me, you don't go, you stay. And I didn't know what to say. I wanted to go with my friends, whatever they were to face. But the Nazis wanted me in the ghetto helping. It was unbearable. So I went back to my friends and they said, what did they want? And I think when they saw the tears streaming down my face, something broke in them too. All the sorrow they'd held back, and the anger. They hugged me and murmured blessings. Some swore. But then, again, a whistle.
Did you ever hear from them? A letter?
None of the Jews taken from Munich in Easter 1942 survived. Some were shot, others were killed by poison gas. Elspeth would have died too. Instead, she went back to the ghetto, stuck it for 2 weeks, and then escaped. She took off her star, burnt her papers. For 2 years she stayed indoors, hidden, hardly daring to exist. And then the Jewish underground helped her to Freiburg and over the Swiss border. Another 2 years later, in the chaos of post-war Europe, she was at last reunited with her husband. In all, 6 million Jews were killed by the Nazis. 4,000 murders every day for 4 years.
It's the worst thing we have. And you fight fear, not with hate, but with love. But with so many people, I could never make them see it like that.
My father worked on the railways. My mother came from a poor farming family. I was their only child. We had a typical flat in working-class Hamburg. Factories were all around us, smoke and noise. The banging and grinding filled the air throughout the day. But it was music to our ears, the music of life itself.
This is the story of one man's childhood. 10 years old when the Nazis came to power, like so many children in Germany, Henry Mettelmann learned to live, to fight, if necessary to die, for Adolf Hitler.
When my opponents say, we won't join you, I just say, your children are mine already. What are you? In time you'll die. But your sons and daughters stand forever in my new camp, and in a short time they'll know nothing else but this new community.
For Henry's parents, the Nazi takeover spelled disaster. Henry remembers their hopelessness as the Brown Pest, as his father called them, marched in triumph outside. But for Henry, the Nazis were new, exciting.
When my father spoke so badly about them, I just didn't understand it. I thought, what does he mean that these Nazis are so dangerous? They were always so friendly to me. I used to run alongside them as they marched, singing their songs with them. They were always so smart in their uniforms, the leather, the jackboots. Es marschiert mit ruhig festem Schritt.
To get the next generation on their side, the Nazis had put tremendous energy into winning them over. Theirs was the party of youth against age, offering young people not just a dream, but a role to play. Standard bearers in the march to a new dawn. It was a way of channeling the natural rebelliousness of youth on organized lines. And the organization responsible was the Hitlerjugend, the youth wing of the Nazi Party.
Denn ihr seid Fleisch, von unserem Fleisch und Blut, von unserem Blut. Und in euren jungen Gehirn brennt dasselbe Geist, der uns beherrscht.
In 1932, the Hitler Youth numbered just 100,000. Within 2 years, it numbered 3.5 million. And by 1939, it was an army, compulsory for all boys, with girls joining its sister organization, the League of German Maidens. It was the largest youth movement the world had ever seen.
Vor uns liegt Deutschland, in uns marschiert Deutschland und hinter uns kommt Deutschland.
Henry's first contact with the Hitler Youth came in the summer of '33. Like many of his friends, he'd joined a youth club, the Church Scouts. They met at the parish hall for songs and competitions. But one day, they turned up to find Hitler Youth boys there to teach them drill. Henry was secretly delighted, but telling his father wasn't easy.
He hadn't wanted me in the Scouts in the first place, a Christian youth organization. He was a down-to-earth working man and didn't want his only son brainwashed by anyone. But to see me sucked up into the Hitler Youth, that really hurt him. And when I told him,
"You must buy me a uniform. They told me to tell you. A brown shirt before the next meeting.
He just laughed. He said,
Know how a bull hates a red rag when it's waved in front of it? Well, that's what a brown rag does to me. I will never waste good money on a brown shirt for my boy.
So what do I tell them?
Tell them. Tell them on my pay. If I spend my money on a brown shirt, then we don't eat. They'll just have to accept that.
and they did accept it, grudgingly. But at the next Hitler Youth meeting, they made me step forward, and I was given a parcel, which I was not to open, but to take home and hand to my parents.
Fritz, look. 2 brown shirts for the boy, with the compliments of the party. Good.
Good? What's good?
Because a shirt is a shirt. So what if it's brown? It's material I won't have to buy and sew. It's good quality too. He can put his elbows on the table and it won't wear through.
I simply loved it in the Hitler Youth. The uniform was so smashing. The dark brown, the black, the swastika. I loved marching, the flag before us, a drum beating the pace. Most roads in Germany at that time had cobbles. It was painful on our feet, but that didn't matter. We felt important. The police had to stop traffic to give us right of way, and passers-by had to salute to respect our flag. I remember how funny it sometimes was with the old ladies with their shopping bags shooting their arms into the air.
As with many German children, the Hitler Youth became the single most important influence in Henry's life. His group met after school and all day Saturday. Plenty of sport, with the emphasis on teamwork. And training in useful skills. Signaling, fixing bikes, collecting waste and scrap metal. But the most important lesson was in Nazi theory. Learning to love Hitler.
It was as if we had created our own atmosphere, the atmosphere of the young, the coming German generation. After all, as the Führer had written, Germany's future belonged to its youth. I told father that. He replied somewhat crushingly,
That's like saying the grass is green.
As his father knew, Henry was being indoctrinated, his head filled with propaganda, Nazi lies, or half-truths endlessly repeated. For adults, spotting propaganda was hard enough. For the young, it was almost impossible.
I remember one day I came home from school and said to my mother,
You know, Mama, I don't think it's right that Dr. Bergman touches me anymore.
Dr. Bergman was our family doctor. Of course, straight away, my mother jumped to the wrong conclusion.
What did he do?
Oh, no. He treated me well. He's a very kind man.
Well, what then?
It's just... I don't think it's right that German boys should be touched by a Jew.
She was horrified that I should say such a stupid, wicked thing. In my defense, I explained how that very day a man in a brown uniform had told our class in school how we should keep the race pure, and how he'd been very proud of me because I had said, I know, why don't we throw all the Jews out of Germany? Like this was some brilliant solution to Germany's problems. But my mother wasn't impressed. All she wanted to know was...
Dr. Bergman, did you mention Dr. Bergman to this man that he touched you?
Yes, Mama. But I did say I didn't think Dr. Bergman was a bad man.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. That's all she said.
This story, so typical in Nazi Germany, Shows how easily young minds took on board dangerous ideas. Schools have been Nazified. Anti-Nazi teachers sacked, textbooks rewritten. Nazi race science was taught in the classroom. Jewish students had separate desks, then separate schools. By 42, they could get no formal education at all. Meanwhile, children like Henry were being taught how to spot the Jewish enemy.
They told me that because of the German blood in my veins, I was a superior human being. I never dreamt of asking what German blood really was.
Old history textbooks were destroyed. Those that replaced them taught children the Nazi version of Germany's past and future.
We learned about Lebensraum, living space, how glorious it would be to fight Poland and Russia, to conquer land for Germany. We learned about battles and wars and kings, how if we stuck together and weren't stabbed in the back like last time, we could not lose. Deutschland, Deutschland, über alles. Germany above everything. And I lapped it all up. It just upset me that my father was so scornful.
Balderdash.
But what was I to do? Was I to say to my teachers, it's all balderdash?
I shouldn't believe what they teach me at school. Is that what you're saying? Not to believe my teachers?
All right, young man. Some of the things they teach you, believe. This pencil, when I drop it. The Nazis cannot change gravity, but just use your head. If it sounds like opinion, say to yourself, whose opinion is it? 2 + 2 = 4. That's fine. That's all right.
But even 2 + 2 could brainwash. Maths books taught angles by plotting the paths of falling bombs. Adding sums meant working out the money saved if Germany got rid of its invalids.
For me, it was all very confusing. Everything I heard at home was the opposite of what they taught me at school and in the Hitler Youth. And it bothered me a great deal. I wanted my loved ones to be right, but I also loved Germany, my fatherland. And I firmly believed that our Führer was giving us back our dignity. I used to get so angry.
All right. I'll tell them tomorrow. They're just teaching us lies.
No, Henry.
Promise me, young girl, you will never repeat what we say to you outside these 4 walls. Do you promise?
Of course, I kept my promise, but I'll never forget their terror, the power I had just as a child. If I had let slip all my father told me, who knows, late at night, the knock on the door, arrest by the Gestapo. We were encouraged in our Hitler Youth meetings to tell tales if we ever heard grown-ups talk against Hitler, against the regime. And there were children so passionately Nazi, they turned in their own parents. How can you explain that? Only that Hitler grabbed us so young, and he never let go.
How many children escaped indoctrination? It's impossible to know. As 10 years of Nazi rule passed by, the Hitler Youth lost its appeal as something exciting. It was now compulsory, backed up by Gestapo laws and busybody Hitler Youth patrols. More and more, the rebellious thing was to refuse to join. These photographs are the only surviving pictures of German youth gangs in the early 1940s. The Edelweiss Pirates, the Texas Band, the Navajos. They beat up Nazi officials, wrote graffiti on walls, but mostly they just hung out and listened to American jazz. Their casual, fun-loving attitude made a mockery of Nazi control.
dance outrageously. They call it swing. Sometimes two boys with one girl, sometimes all together in a wild circle. Girls wear lipstick and paint their nails. It's monstrous.
I remember one time when a group of jazzers had gathered on the pier to play